Welcome to Notable Approvals. I am attorney Amanda Shaffer. It's been a little while since I've done one of these. We've been super busy, but I'm really excited to talk about today's case. It's for an asylum case that was approved after the asylum interview, which is incredibly rare, and I'm going to get to that case in a second while we wait for a few people to join us. A couple of quick announcements. First, don't forget to like us and follow us on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube and wherever you watch us or follow us. We have lots of good stuff coming out. We also have right now a hashtag Positively Immigration hashtag Olympic edition of it. We're highlighting different naturalized U.S. citizens that are right now competing for Team USA. So I recommend you check out those posts as well. And if you find this video or any of our other content useful, please share it with others so that they can see it as well. So, last announcement, tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, 6 p.m. Pacific Time, we will be having episode 12 of Are You Smarter Than a Naturalized Citizen? Two more attorneys will be facing off to see who can pass the naturalization test first. It's been a lot of fun. I invite you all to join us. Okay, so let's get to the case today. So today's case is about a client who is a native and citizen of Togo. Now, if you don't know where Togo is, and I apologize if you are watching this on Instagram, you're not going to be able to see what I'm about to show. However, I will post in the comments section, or I'll post in Instagram is so weird. I'll post in Instagram what I'm showing afterwards. But basically, all I'm showing is where Togo is. It's not a country a lot of people are familiar with. It is a country in Africa that is situated right in between Ghana and Benin. It's a very small country, and I'm looking behind my camera, but I have this little arrow to show you where it is, and that's where Togo is. Just to give you an idea of where we are talking about. Okay, so this is where my client is from. He fled his country and entered the U.S. in June of 2015. He timely filed for asylum a few months later in January of 2016. This client is a pastor, a well-known and respected pastor and missionary. His claim is based on political opinion and his membership in a particular social group. So basically what's going on right now in Togo is that the political party in power has been ruling for over 50 years. It's not exactly a democracy over there. And my client's problem started before he came to the US when he was approached by a friend who was a politician / businessman who was trying to encourage him to run for politics because he was an influential pastor. He had a congregation of 150 people, and he said, "You'd be great to run for parliament." But it turned out he learned that his friend was actually working for the party in power and was trying to, basically, they're playing games, trying to get him into parliament and then control him type of thing. So he said no. He turned down the offer to run, and his friend, who was not his friend anymore, ended up becoming a member of parliament. But this is when my client's problems started in his country. And started with more benign things, such as he, as a pastor, he would travel around booking seminars, booking conferences. All of a sudden, his requests were being denied. And his teachings of Reformation started to get questioned. He then became a member of an organization that is essentially, from what I gather, a missionary type of organization. They would go to different villages in Togo to bring healthcare and to educate. And part of the education, they would talk about the corruption in the government and the corruption in the church. And they went on 2 missions to 2 different villages. Everything was great. After the 3rd mission, he had a problem. And that's when he started discussing the corruption. So shortly after that third mission, he got a call from someone at the National Investigation Agency, which is equivalent to our FBI over here. They called him and said, we want you to come in. Don't worry, it's just like an informational meeting. So he went, and that was not true. They held him for 8 hours, did not tell him why. They then threw him in a dark cell and beat him. Then, for about 3 days, they actually held him up, handcuffed his arms in like the crucifix position from like 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. for like 3 days straight, no food, no water during that time period. So after that, I think somebody knew somebody, that's usually how it happens. He was able to get a temporary release, and he was given basically a summons, being charged with a bunch of crimes, basically saying that you're talking out against the government, that type of thing that we normally see. But what's rare is that we don't always get the actual court document, and we did have the court document in this case. My client suffered so much torture and abuse that he had to go to a hospital for 2 days after he was released from jail. So obviously he was worried at this point, but he wasn't going anywhere yet. But about a week later, he got a call from someone in his house that 5 men with guns were looking for him. And fortunately, he and his family were at church, so they weren't home. And when they heard that, the other pastors said, we're going to hide you, we're going to get you out of the country. A couple days later, they were able to sneak him across the border to Ghana, and then because he already had a B1 visitor visa, he was able to fly to the US. And even though he filed in 2016, and I'm saying, oh, look, his asylum got approved after his interview, you might be thinking, well, why is like 5.5 years passed? That's because he filed at a time when they were so backed up with all of these interviews. They still are, but this was before our former president decided that everyone has to be interviewed within 30 days of filing for asylum. So he ended up he was waiting for a couple of years, and then they kind of reversed the order in which they were interviewing people. So then he waited even longer. And remember, this entire time, he has his wife and his children back home who he's waiting to bring over here. Now he can file for them, but it's still going to be a while. Fortunately, they weren't in as much turmoil as he was in, because they were mostly interested in him, but he definitely has been stressing about that this whole time. So, I had something else to say. I always forget. All right, so yes, he waited 6 years for his asylum interview. It was a crazy long time, and he's fortunate in the sense that, 5.5, 6 years, a lot of things can change. And we've had these problems before with clients who have had to wait this long, either to see the judge or to have their asylum interview, that country conditions change and the claim becomes much harder. And in his case, the name of the ruling party changed, and that's actually kind of common across the world, but they change the name to kind of usually to cover something, or not cover something, but to make it look like there's a change in leadership when there really isn't. So what we did was the type of evidence we submitted, I should say, is he wrote a very detailed statement about what happened to him. And that's what I was reviewing before I started this live, and I was like, wow, this is clearly a very well-educated man who really all he wants to do is help people. And it was a very good affidavit, but that wasn't the only thing. His wife, who was able to corroborate his claim, wrote a detailed affidavit. We then had that summons I mentioned earlier that were the actual charges when they released him from prison. And we had proof, of course, we had to have proof that he is a pastor and a missionary, which he had lots of different leadership certificates, pastor certificates. As I said, he was very well known and very influential over there. So we put all of that in. And then we had 4 affidavits from different pastors corroborating his claims, because A, he's not the only one going through these things over there, and B, they were there firsthand to witness what happened. And then, of course, we put in some country conditions to back up what he was saying, that, you know, there's no freedom of association, it's not a democracy, there's no freedom of speech, etc. And that the political party will detain people who oppose them and will do horrible things to them. Basically, that was the country condition evidence. We only had to submit a little bit of country condition evidence because it was crystal clear in the Department of State reports, which is where you go first when you're submitting country condition evidence. So basically, even though my client had entered the US a few times and went back to his country, that wasn't a problem, and that didn't initiate a referral to the immigration judge. Whenever clients come in here, even with the best claim in the world, if they came to the US and then went home and then came back, I always tell them that because of that, there's one little thing could be the reason they don't prove it right away, and you have to see the judge, and it can be very frustrating. But in his case, you know, his persecution started. You have to explain it. It started after his trips, and it really it didn't become a factor, fortunately. Otherwise, his claim wouldn't be denied. He'd be in immigration court. But fact of the matter is, it wasn't denied. And I think the hardest part for this client, and really other people in this situation as well, because he's not the only client we have, even from 2016, that's still waiting for an interview. And remember, I said January 2016. We have so many clients waiting, and it's just horrible. And we wish something better could be done. But one of the hardest parts is that, like, you're kind of stuck, right? You're here. You can have a work permit. The only way you can leave the US is if you get an advanced parole travel document. Now, this client had these like conferences in other countries, in like Europe and other places, that he really wanted to go to. Of course, if you apply for asylum, you can't go back to your country, or they're not going to let you back into the US, but he wasn't going there. He wanted to go to these conferences. So we tried to apply for advanced parole travel documents for him, which you can, if you're an asylum applicant, you can apply for. However, they're incredibly difficult to get. They're not the same as the advanced parole travel documents that you get when you're applying for a green card, because with that type of advanced parole, you don't have to submit proof of a humanitarian reason or a health reason or any reason. You don't have to have any reason. They just give it to you automatically. But if you're an asylum applicant and you're waiting for your interview and now you need to leave the US, you have to prove that there's a good reason. And basically a good reason is a dying relative or work. But then you have another problem. There's no real expedite process. Now, you can request them to expedite it. Good luck with that. We tried that. You might miss that work conference by the time you get the application approved, and they won't even approve it by then. We've had them send. They took so long to process the application, like 8 months, that they then sent the request for evidence to prove that the client still needed it. And so it's something to keep in mind. Unfortunately, he wasn't in removal proceedings this whole time, or he wouldn't be able to leave the US, because if you're in removal proceedings and you leave the US, you're deporting yourself. So that, fortunately, that wasn't the issue, but we tried a couple of times to get him an advanced parole travel document to be able to go to these conferences, which were really important. But he, most of the time, didn't know about it enough in advance. So by the time they got to the approval, the conference had unfortunately already passed. But luckily, now that he is an asylee, He can get a refugee travel document, which is a completely different thing. You don't need to prove any specific reason. You can apply for it. And again, he can't go back to Togo, but he can go anywhere else. And then in a year, in a year from now, or the year from when the case was granted, he will be eligible to apply for his green card. So this case is a great example of a case that of how to get a case approved at the asylum interview, even though years have passed. It really comes down to you and your statement and what you can do to back it up. And I'm not talking about articles about you or something crazy. I'm just talking about statements from people who knew you or who knew what happened and are able to talk about it in detail. And then any proof you have to show that you're the member of whatever group, that if whether it's a particular social group, political group, religion, whatever it is, to show that you are a member of that. That's the biggest type of evidence that you have to put in. And then, of course, some country condition evidence to kind of corroborate everything and bring it all nicely wrapped up together. So that is all today for notable approvals. Don't forget to like us and follow us, Facebook and YouTube and Instagram and all of that lovely stuff. Share this video if you found it useful or know someone who may. And don't forget to tune in tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, 6 p.m. Pacific Time for episode 12 of Are You Smarter Than a Naturalized Citizen? We have 2 more attorneys going head-to-head to see who can pass the naturalization test first. It's been a lot of fun, and I hope that you will all join us. As always, my contact information has been scrolling across the bottom of your screen, except on Instagram. On Instagram, go to our bio page. I think we have a link to our website. I'm sorry, I'm not as good on Instagram as on the other things. It's just a little harder to put these little things in there. But you can always send me a message and DM me. Happy to get back to you as soon as possible. So that is all for today. Thank you for watching and have a great day.